Hello everyone, good morning and a very warm welcome to our webinar today, Year-End Part 1, all about finishing your 2024 payroll. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and we are joined today by my colleagues Alan, Alice and Jade, who are standing by in the background, ready and waiting to answer your questions. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in the webinar. So we'll start things off with a payroll year-end overview, explaining how information these days is submitted in real time to revenue and what tasks remain when you get to the end of the tax year. We'll then take you through some practical steps. So we'll describe installing your update and share some top tips for a smooth installation. We'll then take a look at finishing your 2024 payroll, and we'll talk about extra pay periods, known as a week 53, holiday periods, small benefit exemption and housekeeping. And then we'll finish with the year-end process, and we'll show you how to produce the employment details summary report. We also have a part 2 webinar, and in that session, we'll take you through setting up the new tax year, including your new payroll calendar, clearing your balances, and what's new for 2025. And you can get signed up for part 2 by following the link in the chat or in the follow-up email that we'll be sending you after today's webinar. So let's get started with our year-end overview. And to put this into context, we're just going to give you a recap of how payroll information is reported to revenue in real time throughout the tax year. So on each and every pay date, as an employer, you will retrieve the latest revenue payroll notifications, or RPNs, from Revenue's online service. And this ensures that your employees are always on the most up-to-date tax credits and cut-off points at that point in time. You would then enter their payment information on the timesheets in the usual way. You'd run to end of period, and then you'd produce a pay slip and pay your employee. But you also now do a submission to revenue, a payroll submission, which will contain the details of any taxable payments and deductions that make up your monthly liability. You may also submit an enhanced reporting submission to report details of any benefits or expenses payments that are required to be reported under ERR. And that includes small benefit, which is what we're going to cover a little bit later on. Now, because you're doing this each pay date, when you get to the end of the month, Revenue have enough information to produce your statement of account. So this is usually available by the 5th day of the following calendar month, and it gives you a summary of your liabilities broken down into tax, PRSI, USC, and LPT. They also make available to your employee the pay and tax details that you submitted on their behalf. So employees can log into My Account via the Revenue website, and they would see details of what's been submitted by you. Now, to make sure everything in your payroll matches up with what you've submitted to Revenue, we recommend at the end of each month, you run the Employer Monthly Liability Report, and you compare that and reconcile it with your Revenue Statement of Account. So you should do that as you go through the year, but you might want to repeat that process at the end of the year as one final check. And as you do this each month, when you get to the end of the tax year, so the last day of the tax year is the 31st of December, there's no further reporting that you need to do to Revenue. So all of the official end of year documents are now dealt with by Revenue, and they're made available to your employee via the My Account area of the Revenue website. And they would get an employment details summary for all employments during the year and an end of year statement that they'll be able to access from January next year. So this replaces the P60 that employers used to give to their employees. Now, what you can do as an employer, and this is optional, is to produce the employment details summary report, which you can give to your employee for their reference, or that you can keep for your own payroll records. And that's the year-end report that we're going to take a look at towards the end of the webinar. So as you can see, when you get to the end of the year, there's not a lot else you need to do in terms of reporting information to Revenue. But the aim of today's webinar is to ensure that you do complete 2024 in the correct way, and you're all set up for a smooth transfer to 2025, the steps that we'll cover in part 2. So we're now going to move on to talk about installing your payroll year-end update. This was released last Monday, and it is available as both an automatic update within your software and as a download from our help center. Now, it is vital that you install the update as soon as possible before you process year-end, as you will need this update in order to produce the year-end reports and to set up the 2025 tax year. If you haven't already installed it, you can find it by logging into any of your payrolls and then clicking the Help menu and check for updates. And then you should see a pop-up like the screenshot on the slide that tells you that the update for year-end 2024 is available. And then you would go ahead and download it. And then once it's downloaded, you'll be prompted to install it. If for some reason automatic updates aren't working for you, or if you prefer to download the installer manually, you can find it on our help center. Direct link there is on the slide, or you can go to sage.ie/PYE and follow the links for Sage Payroll, Micropay. Now, just to talk through the installation screens, as part of the installation, you'll be asked to choose the installation type. So there are two options. There's either a This Computer installation, which will do the full installation of the program and the data update. And this would be used if you only access your payroll from one PC. So it will update everything in one go. And then you have the client server options, which would be used to update a multi-user version of payroll where you access Sage Payroll from more than one PC. So if you do access payroll across a network and you need to update more than one PC, we strongly recommend that you update the server first. So when you download that file and you run the installer, run the server install first, and that's going to update the location where your shared data is held. And then you would go ahead and update each client. Now, if you try to access payroll from a client that hasn't been updated, you will be prompted to install the update there and then, and it would run the installer from the server location. So you don't necessarily have to download it on each of the PCs. Just need to update your server, and then you'll be prompted to update the clients when you access payroll. Now, once you've been through the installation process and that has completed, you should find that you have a new desktop shortcut for Sage Payroll 2025, as this update installs both an update for the current tax year, version 27.3, and that adds the payroll year-end functionality to the current payroll, and it installs version 2025 or version 28 ready for use in the new year. And you can check your version number at the top of the screen. So I want to show you a bit of this in a short demo. So what I will do is bring the slides down, and we'll jump into Sage Payroll. So first of all, to check if you've installed the update, have a look at your version number at the top of the screen. So mine is 2024 version 27.3, which confirms I've installed the update. And you'll notice it also says PYE 2024 ready. Now, if you're not on this version, if you're on a lower version, you just go to the Help menu at the top here. You come down and click Check for Updates, and then the automatic update service will check and it will find the payroll year-end update for 2024, and you'll be able to download it from there. Now, for me, I'm already up to date, as you can see from my version number. But while I'm here, I also want to show you a handy way of checking where your program's installed and also where your data is found. So if you're logged into a payroll, if you go to your Help menu at the top and then click System Information, on the support homepage that loads, here on the left-hand side, you'll find your program directory. So it's worth making a note of this so that you can check that the update is installing into the same location. So my program directory in this example is C:/program files x86 / Sage Payroll IRL. And then there's a folder representing the tax year. So the program directory is this Sage Payroll IRL, and I can just check that that's the folder being updated when I install. Now, my data directory is also on my C drive, as I only access payroll from one PC and I have the data in the same place. So I did a This Computer install, which updates both the program and the data at the same time. So that's where you can check that information if you're not sure. Other thing I want to show you is that I have a new shortcut on my desktop for Sage Payroll 2025. Now, if I try to open this before I've completed year end, I will get as far as the login screen, where you would enter your username and your password. So I could enter my username and password here, but at this point in time, I do not have any payrolls to log into. And the reason for this is that I've not completed payroll year end and set up the new tax year in 2024. So absolutely nothing to be concerned about. It's normal for there not to be any payrolls here just yet. And you'll see how to transfer your data if you join us for part 2 of these webinars. So that's my software updated. Just going to give you a quick recap and share some top tips for a smooth installation. So you would run the update either from an auto update or from a manual download. It will upgrade version 2024 to version 27.3 and at the same time install version 28. And if you run across a network, do a server install first and then do the client install on each PC. Here are some other tips. Number 1, when you do the installation, try to make sure that you're either at start of period or end of period, as that will minimize the chance of any data issues when the data is upgraded. Second tip is to ensure that you have an up-to-date backup of your payroll data. So if the worst does happen, you have some data you can restore. Tip 3 is to check your program and data directories, which you can find in help and system information. Number 4 is to log onto your PC as an administrator. So do make sure you've got the correct permissions to be able to install an update. Your IT team can help with that. And the 5th tip is that if you have antivirus software, consider disabling the antivirus just while you do the installation, as this will stop it from conflicting with the install. Sometimes an antivirus can stop files from being copied, which results in problems after the installation. So if you see any antivirus pop-ups during the install and you get any issues in the program after that, switch your antivirus off, repeat the installation, and in 99% of cases that will fix the problem. So that's your first step, and I know that some of you will have already completed that. So let's now move on to finishing your 2024 payroll. Now this step is exactly how it sounds. It means you'll be processing your payroll for all remaining pay dates in 2024. And if you pay your employees weekly, fortnightly, or 4-weekly, you may need to process what's known as an extra pay period. So to be clear, extra pay periods will never affect a monthly pay frequency, as you will always have 12 monthly pay dates in a year. But if you do run weekly, fortnightly, or 4-weekly, because the number of days in a year doesn't divide into an exact number of weeks, depending on when your pay date lands, you may end up with an extra pay date in the year. And if you pay weekly, that would be a 53rd payment, which is why the extra pay period is sometimes known as a week 53. So 2024 is a leap year. So it has 366 days, which if you divide by 7 gives you 52 whole weeks and 2 extra days, which results in the extra pay period if your pay date lands on those days. So the specific pay dates where you get that extra pay period this year are Monday, the 30th of December, or Tuesday, the 31st of December. Another way to put it is if I bring up a tax calendar, which you can download from our help center. This lays out the year in terms of tax weeks and months. So you can see it started on Monday, the 1st of January, 2024. And when we get to the end of the year, tax month 12, we've got our 52 whole weeks and we have 2 extra days, which would result in the extra pay period. That's really important to note that if you don't have a pay date landing on Monday or Tuesday, you should stick to your original payment schedule. You shouldn't change your calendar to either create or avoid a week 53. As this can cause you problems moving on that you may need to go back and correct. So is there an easy way of checking if you have an extra pay period? Well, there certainly is. I'm just going to show you this in Payroll. So I do have a weekly payroll, so I need to check if I have an extra pay period. And to do this, I'm going to check the payroll calendar by going to company/payroll at the top, and then coming down and clicking on calendar. Now from here, I can see the period numbers along with my pay date and bank date. And if I scroll all the way to the end, I can check my last period of the year. And in this example, it's period 52, because my pay date is a Friday, and my last pay date of 2024 will be Friday, the 27th of December. So that confirms to me that I do not have an extra pay period this year. And then the following pay date after that will be my period 1 of 2025. So that's an easy way to check. This is an example of what you might see if you do have an extra pay period. So on the slide here, I have a weekly calendar that does have a period 53, because the regular pay date is a Tuesday, and last pay date of the year is Tuesday, 31st of December. For fortnightly, the extra pay period is 27, and for 4 weekly, it is 14. And when you come to set that extra pay period, when you come to process the payroll, once you've set the period number, clicked OK, you'll see the pop-up message just informing you that tax and USC will calculate on a week 1 basis. So that's in line with revenue rules on extra pay periods. You may also notice the indicator on the pay slip to see that it's been calculated on a week 1 basis. And for anyone here that's a CWPS user, that's a construction workers pension scheme, you may see an error when you try to set an extra pay period. But if you follow the steps in the guide that I've linked to just here, that will take you through the workaround for that. So hopefully that's cleared up whether you have an extra pay period and what you need to do. So next thing I want to talk about is holiday periods. Because the tax year ends on the 31st of December, obviously you have Christmas week leading up to that, and there's a good chance that some businesses will close over that period. And if you pay your staff weekly, in particular, you might need to either run your payroll a little bit earlier than usual in advance, and you may even choose to pay your employees for more than 1 week at the same time. Now, if that's something that you'll need to do, you have 2 options when it comes to processing it in payroll. Option 1 is to process each weekly period separately in the usual way. So enter your timesheets, save those, run end of period, do your pay slips and your submission. And then you could set the next period straight away and run through the exact same process. So you'll end up with multiple sets of pay slips and reports for the different weeks you need to pay. And then you can either schedule the payments to be paid to your employees on the usual pay dates or slightly earlier if pay date lands on a bank holiday. Or if you want to pay it as a lump sum, you could add together the net pay from all of the separate periods, and you could enter those amounts when you come to set up your bank payment. Now, option 2 is to process a holiday period in Sage Payroll. But the advantage of this is that you get a single set of reports and pay slips covering multiple periods, and you'll be able to produce a bank payment file with the total net pay amount. It does this by using the allowances for tax and cut-off points for the full period that you're paying, and it will also multiply up any standard amounts that have been included in holidayable pay. Now, a couple of caveats to this. Holiday periods must not be used for pay dates that would have been the extra pay period, so Monday the 30th or Tuesday the 31st of December, or for any pay dates that land in the new tax year, as these do need to be processed separately, and anything in 2025 needs to be processed in the 2025 software. Now, there is some guidance on processing a holiday period following the link on the slide, but to set it up, if you want to set up a holiday period for everyone on your payroll, a quick way of doing that is to increase the number of insurance weeks when you come to set the earlier period. So in the example on the slide, we're setting period 51, but we've increased the insurance weeks to 2, so that will apply a holiday period for everyone so that it will cover the week 52 payment as well. Or you can set it up for individual employees on their timesheet by entering the number of holiday periods in the relevant box. So it's the same example there on the right. We're processing week 51. We also want to include week 52, so that's one holiday period, but you can see they're getting 2 tax credits, and fixed payments and deductions can also be multiplied automatically. So like I say, there is more guidance on that following the link, and of course you can still run them as separate pay periods if you find that easier. So up next in completing the 2024 tax year is processing small benefit exemption items. So under small benefit exemption, you can provide up to 2 non-cash benefits to your employees per tax year, and as long as the value doesn't exceed €1,000. But since the 1st of January this year, any small benefits provided to employees must be reported to revenue as part of the enhanced reporting requirements. So a lot of you maybe only ever deal with ERR towards the end of the year, if you're providing gift cards, for example, under small benefit exemption. And the good news is that you can submit your ERR through your Sage Payroll software, or you could do it manually and submit the ERR information via the ROS portal. Now, something to note is that the rules for small benefit exemption are changing in 2025. So the annual limit is increasing to €1,500, and you'll be allowed to give up to 5 small benefits in the tax year. So let's take a look at how you would process this in payroll. Now, it would involve setting up a payment and a deduction, because a small benefit isn't a cash item, it's a non-cash benefit, such as a one-for-all gift card. So you enter the value of the small benefit as an expense, and then you take away that same value as a net deduction. So I'll show you where to set up the payments, and when it comes to the timesheets, we'll be putting one entry in payments and the same amount in the deductions. Now, if you've done that using an expenses payment, once you've ran end of period, you'll then be able to send an enhanced reporting submission, and you should do that in the same period that you actually give the small benefit to your employee. So I want to bring that to life for you by giving you a demo. So let's just drop the slides down again. And for this particular demo, I am going to process the small benefit in week 52, but you would obviously do it in the period that you're providing the small benefit. So first thing I'll do is set the period. It's my 27th of December pay date. And before I go into the timesheets, I just want to show you the payment and deduction that I've set up for this. So if I go to company payroll and then payments, within my payments, I have several expenses payments. The one I'm using for this is small benefit exemption, that's what I've called it. And if I edit it to show you the settings, you can see the type of payment is an expenses payment, and the enhanced reporting category for this one is small benefit. So I've already got that set up. If you need to create one, you can do it by clicking new. You would choose your expenses and small benefit categories like so. In addition to that, if I go to company payroll and then deductions, I have a deduction with the same label, small benefit exemption. This is set up as a net deduction and a standard subtype. So this will be used so that we don't include the value of the small benefit in the employee's net pay. So once you've retrieved your RPNs, you would enter your timesheets in the usual way. I'm just going to go down the batch entry screen, so I've got quite a few of these to enter. So just for my first employee, Effie, I'm going to select the payments and deductions to show in this grid. So at the bottom of the screen, if I click select pay deductions, I can tick the box for the payments I want to see. And then we're giving them a €500 gift card. So I'm going to enter that as a small benefit exemption, and you'll see the net pay goes up when I do that. But I'm also going to deduct the same amount and you can see the net pay has returned to what it was. And looking at the detailed entry, if you were doing it with individual timesheets, we've got the expenses payment. We also have the net deduction on the same timesheet. And also see the same items there on the payslip preview. Now, because I've got a few of them, I'm just going to work down the list. Everyone's getting €500 gift card. So that's the payment. This is the deduction. And if I'm happy with the other payment values, I'll just go ahead and save the timesheets. And then you would complete your payroll in the usual way, running the control summary and gross to net report, running end of period, and then sending the payroll submission, where you would report the usual taxable payments and deductions. So that's just submitted as you normally would. And that one is complete. But now I can send my enhanced reported submission to specifically report those small benefits. So if I click onto this, first thing it shows you is the categorize screen. Now, because we set it up as a small benefit expenses payment, it has automatically categorized it as a small benefit. And we don't have any other types of expenses to report this period. So I'm happy that I've got €500 for the small benefit. I'm going to save that information and click next. Already got my ROS certificate saved. I click next again, and then it gives me a summary of what I'm about to submit. So it's all small benefit, 10 employees in total. I can go ahead and send that to revenue. So that is now submitted, and I've reported the small benefit payments in addition to my usual payroll submission. So I'm now at end of period for period 52, which was my last pay date of the year. So I'm ready to start thinking about my year-end tasks. So you can read more on processing ERR on the Sage Help Centre, which I've linked to there on the slide. And a quick tip, if you do have a lot of benefits that you need to submit, there is a way where you can import them directly to the submission rather than putting them through your timesheets. So if you search our Help Centre for ERR import, you'll find the article that explains how. So we've now completed our processing for 2024, but before we move on to the year-end reports, I just want to talk about a little bit of housekeeping, starting with reconciling. So in the introduction, we talked about at the end of each month, revenue creating your statement of account based on all the submissions you've made in the previous month, and that you could compare that with the employer monthly liability report in payroll to ensure that everything entered in payroll matches up with what you submitted to revenue. Now, if you haven't been doing it throughout the year, or if you want to repeat this exercise at the end of the year, you might be interested to know that you can retrieve a revenue statement directly in payroll without having to log on to the ROS portal. At this point in time, we can get them up to October, because that was the last completed tax month. And then once we're into January, you can do your final check for kind of November and December. So I want to show you how to retrieve the statement and how to run the report. And for those of you that have multiple payrolls that you submit with the same ROS certificate, I'll also show where you can combine that report so it shows the total figures. So returning to the demo, first thing I want to show you is the revenue statement. So to get this in payroll, you just need to go to Direct Payroll Reporting at the top of the screen, and then click Revenue Statement of Account. So click Next, and it then connects to ROS, and it will download the latest totals for income tax, PRSI, USC, and LPT. And then for each completed month, there'll be a total liability figure, which you can then check against the monthly liability report. Now, ignore the numbers that you're seeing here. This is just for illustration purposes. You can export the details as a report. if you wanted to print it out. So if you click Export Details, you can then print or save a copy of this statement. And then you've got something you can then compare with the employer monthly liability report. And you can run that if you go into the Other Reports option here on the right-hand side. You go to the Company tab, because this can be ran for multiple payrolls in your company, and you would choose Employer Monthly Liability. And I'm just going to go ahead and preview the report. Now, this is the screen that you'll see, and if you have more than one payroll that you submit with the same ROS certificate, what you can do is you can tick those payrolls so they are included on the report, and that way you are comparing like for like. In this example, I only have a weekly payroll, so that's the only one it's going to include. And then I've got the option of showing quarterly subtotals and PRSI breakdowns. Now, I'm just going to go for the basic report, which will then come up on screen. And then I have the same information laid out in the same way, broken down into these different deductions, and I'll have a total liability figure for each month. So the idea here is that you go through month by month, ticking off the total liability, making sure that it matches. And if you find something that doesn't match, that's when you'll need a little bit of further investigation. Now, second page of this report gives some guidance on why there might be differences between the revenue statement and this report. The main reasons would be if you've made an error correction in payroll, but you didn't resubmit that period to revenue, that then won't match up with revenue's information. Or if you did a correction on the ROS portal directly, but didn't make that correction in payroll, that's another reason why it wouldn't match up. Possibly you've forgotten a submission in payroll. So if the figures are lower on the revenue statement than the report for a particular month, you might want to check your submission log and see if there's a period that you need to go back and submit. Or if you find that all of the totals are out for every month, could be that you're not comparing like for like. So do make sure when you're running this report, you include the same payrolls that are submitted under your ROS certificate. But that's where you get the reports from. And as I say, the idea is work through each report, ticking off the values 1 month at a time, and then looking into anything that doesn't quite match up. And you can read more about both of those reports following the links there on the handout. Last bit of housekeeping before we move on to the year-end report is validating your payroll data. Now, again, this has become business as usual, as it can now be ran automatically at start of period, but always good towards the end of a tax year to do this check again and to deal with any issues that might be flagged. So I want to show you where to find the report and also the setting to automatically run it at start of period. And that way you can start dealing with any issues as and when they arise. And I'll give you a bit more kind of guidance on what to do if you do find any issues. So a couple of places you can run this. Here on the left-hand side within the pay run tasks, you've got a link to validate payroll data. Or you can go to the reports menu, down to validate payroll data, and you can click validate payroll data here. That then runs the checks on this payroll. And if any issues are found, it's categorized as either company, employee, or GDPR. And you would see the detail of any issues either by following the link or by clicking on the relevant tab. Now, ideally, what you want to be seeing is what I'm seeing, no issues found. But if there are any issues, click on the relevant tab and it will give you the detail of the issue here and also some links to further support. Now, I'd strongly recommend that you run this at the start of each pay run. And if you go into your settings found at the bottom here, you can tick the box to automatically validate payroll data at start of period. And there's also an option to only show results when issues are found. So that way it's doing the check, but you're only being alerted if you need to take action. So that's what I'd recommend for your setting. You can also find that setting from reports, validate payroll data, and then start of period settings just here. So I've done my check. I've got no issues found. If you do find issues, follow the link on the article there and that will take you to further support. but I'm now ready to complete my payroll year-end process. Now, as you'll probably appreciate by now, the year-end process itself, pretty straightforward. Revenue are going to deal with all the official forms. So based off your submissions, they'll produce the employment detail summaries and end of year statement for your employee, which they would need to access via My Account on the Revenue website. It becomes available usually at some point during January. But as an employer, what you can do is produce an employment detail summary report that you'd either keep for your own records, or if you want to, you can give to your employees for their reference. Now, this is completely optional. You don't have to produce this report at all, but it might be good that you've got a record of the employment detail summary, and it gives your employees a way of sort of checking that everything from your payroll is matching up with their official document from Revenue. Now, this one's designed to be printed if you're going to give a copy to your employees, or exported as a PDF if, for example, you want to keep the full report for your own records. So let's take a quick look at it now. So first of all, do make sure that you are at end of period for your last period of the year. You can check that at the status at the bottom. And then to run the report, go to year end, then tax, and then tax year end reports. I'm going to select employment detail summary, and I have the option of including levers. I could print it directly or output it as a PDF directly, but I'm going to preview first. And you'll see here in the preview, I've got one report per employee. So it shows tax year, employee details, and then totals for the pay, tax, USC, etc. And this should line up or should match up with what they see on their official employment detail summary when that's produced by Revenue. So this one's for reference purposes. I can either print them out if I want a hard copy, or if I want my own copy, I might export this report. I'm just going to drop it on my desktop. I'm going to call that Employment Detail Summary 2024. So then I've got a copy of that report that I would keep for my records. Now, you may have noticed that there is an email option if you preview the report first, but please be aware that if you email the report, it will attach the entire report, so every employment detail summary, to a single email. So obviously don't do this if you're sharing the report with your employees, because you don't want to be sending them everyone's pay for the year. But if you did need to produce just an individual employment detail summary, quick tip, you can use the sort and filter option. So if, for example, I wanted it for employee code 1, I could put that in the from and to box. I could then preview it, and I'll see there's just one report in this one, and then I could export it as a PDF. I could choose to email it, type the email address and send it, but be very careful with the email option. Obviously make sure it's only going to the people that it should go to. So once that's done, you can cancel out of this screen, and you are then ready to move on and set up 2025. So that is also bringing us to the end of the demonstrations for today's webinar. But just to recap that last section, finishing your 2024 payroll. First thing we went through is checking if you have an extra pay period. So that's weekly, fortnightly, or 4-weekly, where your pay date lands on Monday the 30th or Tuesday the 31st of December. You'd complete payroll for all pay dates remaining in 2024. And if you have given out any small benefits, you might want to process those through payroll as well, so they can be submitted. Once you're at end of period for your last period of the year, you'd reconcile your reports and run validate payroll data. And then that optional task is printing the employment detail summary, either for your reference or for your employees. That can be printed or saved as a PDF. So that's it for part 1. But what's coming up in part 2, I hear you ask? Well, that one's all about setting up your 2025 payroll. It's starting from the 27th of November and running right through to the 14th of January. And we'll give you demos and guidance on transferring your payroll data from 2024, setting up your new payroll calendar in 2025 and clearing financial balances where needed, setting the first period of the year and retrieving the latest RPNs. And we'll give you a run through of what's new for 2025, including those key budget changes. So you can sign up either following the links on the handout, the link in the follow-up email, or in the chat, right at the top of the chat. It'd be great to see you here for part 2. There's also additional support available on our help centre at sage.ie/help. Simply follow the links for Sage Payroll and Micropay, and you'll find our payroll year-end hub. And further support is available if you need it via our new personalised training options. So the way that these works is they're one-to-one. So you get a Sage expert all to yourself or to a group of colleagues who work for you. And they will support your very own year-end process, including downloading and installing the update if you haven't yet done that, giving you the confidence that you have all your preparation steps covered before you close off 2024, and then giving you the specific next steps for setting up 2025 as you move into that new tax year. So charges do apply for this service, but if you'd like to know more, if you're interested in a personalised training session, just respond to the poll that I'm about to put on screen, and a member of our team will be in touch. So I'm going to go on to mute just briefly, and I will come back on once we've answered all the questions and we're ready to wrap up. So I'll speak to you soon. Hi again, everyone, and thanks so much for sending your questions through. As I thought, the team have done a great job answering those for you. As we are now out of time, we are going to wrap things up there. So thanks once again for your time today. I do look forward to seeing you on part 2 of the sessions. Look out for that follow-up email arriving later today, and enjoy the rest of your week. But from myself and the team here at Sage, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.